last few years, Demon Slayer games and Roblox have just kept on coming, and it doesn't look like they'll be stopping anytime soon. And each of these games has at least one thing that others don't, whether it's good combat, gameplay, or even graphics. But only one of these games can be the best, and so today we'll be figuring out just which Roblox Demon Slayer game that is. Starting with arguably one of the biggest Roblox Demon Slayer games of all time, Project SLAYER. The biggest thing about this game is probably its graphics. The game itself looks really good, and when it first came out, pretty much everyone was on it. The combat is pretty smooth too, even though it's not really super balanced. But the game has also tried doing some unique things in the past, like creating an actual Mugen Train game mode where you can progress the story like how they did in the anime. The game's progression is also decently unique, having your character train or unlock various breathing styles, and the training itself is actually pretty cool as well. You basically just train exactly like characters from the show by training your lungs, meditating, and pulling boulders. I'm gonna put Project SLAYER as amazing because of the impact it's had on the community. The game came out a while ago and still averages 15,000 players to this day, which is wild. And then of course there's also Project SLAYER 2, which looks decent, but because we don't really know too much about it except that it looks just like the first game, for now I'll put this as potential. Next up we have Yaiba. Even though this game hasn't fully released yet, it looks beautiful. This is the more hardcore Demon Slayer game, and you know it's probably gonna be good because the owners also worked on other projects like Your Bizarre Adventure, GPO, Deep Oaken, and Strongest Battleground, which just kind of shows the level that he's at as a developer. The game's combat looks super smooth, and it seems like there's a lot of mechanics that you'd have to master in order to be good at it, like using the environment to fight against your enemy, or even just being good at parrying. I have to say, out of all the Demon Slayer games I've seen, this one probably looks the most realistic. I'm gonna put Yaiba has potential, only because we haven't really seen much of the progression yet and don't know too much about how the game works. Next up is Demon Fall, and I would say that this is probably the Demon Slayer game with the most content. The game has pretty much every single breathing style and blood demon art from the show, and you can choose to either become a human, demon, or even a hybrid, which lets you unlock moon breathing. This is also the only Demon Slayer game I've ever seen that has an actual well-made infinity castle where you can actually fight with the Hashira against the upper moons, and something about that is just really cool to me. I'm gonna put Demon Fall at GOATs purely because when it comes to content and what you can actually do, I'm pretty sure this is the biggest Demon Slayer game. Next up is Demon Bane, and this one isn't released yet, but it's another personal favorite of mine. Like Project SLAYER, this game has some really beautiful graphics, and it's trying a lot of things I've personally never seen in other Demon Slayer games, like having some really beautiful impact frame cutscenes, and also having really good maneuverability, letting the player do stuff like wall run, wall climb, and slide, which aren't super big things, but still small details that a lot of other Demon Slayer games usually tend to ignore. The game itself also has some pretty smooth combat. It feels like all the attacks have actual weight behind them, and I think whether you really care about combat or not, you would still enjoy this one. I'm gonna put this game in pretty good. I love the way it looks, and I was trying to do something unique, but I can't say too much more about it until we see more about how the game actually works. Next up is Demon Hunter, and I won't lie, this is once again definitely one of my personal favorites. This is a new unique hardcore Demon Slayer game created by the owner of All Star Tower Defense, and what stands out to me the most about this one was how the game was made. First of all, the game literally lets you create your own unique breathing style, meaning that no matter what breath you choose to go, you can make your own custom moveset. The way breathing works in this game is super interesting as well. You can actually create your moves to target various parts of a demon, like for example their legs, arms, or even neck, and player demons can then actually regenerate some parts after you've cut them off, which makes the game way more realistic. It's also not like most Demon Slayer games where you pretty much just sit there and beat up bandits until you reach a certain level, but instead it looks like they put actual thought into it. Like most Demon Slayer games, your character does have to go through final selection, but after that you start actually going on missions where you'll see that player demons, not NPCs, but actual player demons will come and try to kill you. So while you're trying to progress, you have to actually fight them, which gives the game some tension and just makes it a lot more engaging. But the game's combat is super fun as well, and honestly really addicting, and if you're a fan of skill-based combat, then you'd probably like this one. I'll put this game in pretty good, but if it had just a little bit more effort put into the way the game looked, I'd put it at GOAT. Next up is Rogue Demon. This is more of a battlegrounds type Demon Slayer game, and normally I don't really play games like this, but I think if you're into quick combat with a lot of combo variety, you probably really enjoy this one. The game looks kind of simple, but it still gets pretty advanced. It has a good variety of breathings to choose from, and also some unique mechanics like allowing you to become more agile and regain health when using total concentration breathing, and it even has multiple variations for most moves. I would say this game probably has some of the more realistic breathing moves, and they're all actually pretty fun to use. I'll put this game in pretty good because it's definitely something you could just sit there and kill some time on. Next up is Wisteria, and this game was really good for its time. The game had a pretty unique progression system where in order to fully master a breathing style, you would have to actually train with the master of that specific breathing, whether it was water, fire, or even moon breathing. And the way this game did stats was pretty cool too. Depending on which stat you wanted to train, you had to actually train in the same way that Tanjiro did at the start of the show. So if you wanted to train your agility stat, for example, you'd have to actually run down a mountain while avoiding traps or running away from logs, or if you wanted to train your strength, you'd have to actually pull boulders, and overall, it was just a really cool and unique game for its time. The game also had a decent amount of content. You can unlock a Slayer mark, which lets you do more damage, and also use a see-through world, which lets you see your enemies' health. And the combat wasn't bad either. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was good for its time. I'll put this one at average, purely because I haven't really played enough to know too much about it, but from visuals alone, the game looks decent. There's also Wisteria 2, which came out a few years after the first one, and this game was good, but it also had a lot of bugs, and it didn't really have a whole lot of content, so I'm gonna put this one at average. And next up is SLAYER RPG, which I think is one of, if not the first Roblox Demon Slayer games ever made. It's definitely the first one I've ever played personally, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the Demon Slayer game that started off the trend of them releasing on the platform, because after this game, we started seeing a whole bunch of new Demon Slayer games. The game's progression was pretty unique at the time. You had to actually go out and find your trainer, which was something that we had never really seen before when it first came out, and the combat was really good for the time as well. I'll put this game at GOATs because although it probably wouldn't hold up as well now, it was still one of, if not the first Roblox Demon Slayer games to ever be made, and it's definitely one of the first Roblox Demon Slayer games to change the platform. There's also Demon Slayer RPG 2, which was a sequel to that game, and just like the first one, the game wasn't bad, but this one also wasn't anything too crazy either, so I'll put it at average for now. Next up is Hinokami. This is a new Demon Slayer game created by the same developers of Demon Slayer RPG 1 and 2. This game isn't released yet, but it looks like they're trying to put a unique spin on the anime this time by doing things like giving the game its own storyline, and the combat looks pretty clean as well. This is also the first Roblox Demon Slayer game I've seen to do actual subclasses, like how on the show, for example, Tengen was a ninja but also a Demon Slayer at the same time, and you can actually do stuff like that in this game, which is actually a pretty cool idea. It's also apparently trying to do things like having an actual infinity castle and focusing more on stuff like in-game immersion, even doing things like adding in actual destruction physics and letting demons rampage through buildings and destroy them. I won't lie, from what we've seen so far, this game is definitely going to be the cleanest looking out of the three of them, and this game should be one of the first on the platform to show us what a good Demon Slayer game with the graphics that we have available today would look like. I'll put this one at half potential for now, only because we haven't really seen enough to say too much more just yet, but this game is definitely one of the sleepers on this list, and it honestly surprised me with how unique and well made it's shaping up to be. Next up is Slayers Unleashed. I haven't really played this one personally, but what I've seen, it's a pretty decent Demon Slayer game. It has a good variety of breathings, decent graphics, and overall it just seems like a pretty standard Demon Slayer game. I'll put this one at average purely because I haven't really played it enough to know too much about it, but purely from visuals alone, the game looks decent. Next up is Demon Journey, and once again, this is one of the first Roblox Demon Slayer games. The game had a pretty interesting progression system for its time, making the player travel across the map to find various trainers, and the combat was decent for when it came out as well. I'll put this game at pretty good, purely because of the impact it had on the community when it first came out, and of course, it being one of the original Roblox Demon Slayer games. Next up is Demon Journey 2, which is the sequel of that game, and although this one hasn't released yet, it still looks super interesting. The combat looks way more fun and fluid than the first game, and it seems like they'll be doing a similar form of progression, where you still have to actually search for the trainer of the breathing style you want to use in order to then get taught their techniques. I'll put this game has potential, purely because while this one does look good, it still hasn't come out yet. Next up is Slayer's Retribution, which is an interesting. This game hasn't released yet, but it looks like they're trying to do some unique mechanics like having various sword stances and things like neck vulnerability, where if you can use the see through world, you can see whether or not a demon's neck can be cut, which is an interesting one. And the game also apparently has a storyline, where I assume you would progress through the actual story of Demon Slayer. There's also combat mechanics like posture and even sword sharpness. For now, I'll put this game has potential, purely because we don't really know enough to say too much more yet. Next up is Onikiri, and this is another one of the original Roblox Demon Slayer games, and even though it was actually pretty simple for its time, this one kind of just gave you a unique feel. The game's progression system wasn't super complicated. You pretty much just found your trainer like most other Demon Slayer games and then learned their various techniques from them. But at the time this game came out, it was bringing in new concepts that we'd never really seen before, and it was also one of, if not the first Roblox Demon Slayer game to do a decent final selection. I put this game at pretty good because when the game first came out, it was really something else. Whether it's new Demon Slayer games or even old ones, each of these games have at least one thing that's unique to them that most others just might not. Whether that's a super polished combat system like Yaiba's, really beautiful graphics like Demon Bane, or even just well thought out gameplay like Demon Hunter. And a lot of these newer games are even pushing the boundaries of what can be done with the Demon Slayer game. Hinokami, for example. But yeah, yo, this has been my personal opinion on the best Roblox Demon Slayer game. This is just my personal opinion, so if you agree or disagree, let me know down below. Be sure to comment your favorite game. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that sub button, drop a like in the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.